Today we are doing a DIY project, repurposing some old things and hopefully making some wonderful new things. Today we are going to try making a larger rabbit tractor for our grow out bunnies. Now, this is kind of a new to us experiment. We've always shied away from tractoring, but this year vegetation is so lush and it just seems to make sense. Now, with the price of materials out there right now, we are not going to some elaborate thing. We're repurposing some old rabbit cages that we had from when we kept them in buildings and seeing if we can somehow make a tractor out of this.
We have a smaller version, which we've actually, we'll take and show you that before we get into the build here. We have been using again and quite successfully, but stick around for the end of the video when we get this together, because we'll go over a few things in the tractors that are definitely considerations. Now, our building material of choice here is mostly wire shelving, which is readily available, very sturdy. So we're going to get going here. So here is our original sort of design. And I'll come down in a little closer because you can see these bunnies. This is all one litter, separated 2 girls, 2 boys, which worked out perfectly. They've been tractoring for a while here, and this has given us the idea, let's go bigger. Go big or go home, so to speak. So you can see behind the trail, all the way down to Stephanie there, where the tractor's been. Now, of course, this is an area that we don't mind if they eat it right down, but it's working pretty good. So we're going to go build a larger tractor.
All the way.
As you can see, not an exact science, but it works, and the bunnies get pretty used to it.
They move quick once they
figure it out.
Come on.
They're eager to get to the new,
they want the new
vegetation.
Grass. This is all nice baby weeds too, so it's like a sweet treat.
So as you can see, the basic concept is this particular one's 2 cages. They're roughly 4 feet by 16 inches.
Yep. So
not huge, but we just put the
not huge, but when you're moving them a couple times a day,
it's a lot of space.
It is.
A lot of fresh space.
And they keep moving to constant new ground. They can see their siblings, even though there's this is 2 girls, 2 boys, so we had to separate them anyways. This is working out perfect.
But the wooden box is basically the shelter so that we can leave it out at night. And
it also gives them a spot
to get away from
predators if by any chance a raccoon or a fox or something came along.
It's wide enough nothing can reach them at the back. I think that's, I forget how wide that is.
This is 2 feet here.
Yeah, so 2 feet. So
2 feet.
No raccoon can reach the back, basically. They can get away from them. So that's the small version.
Don't know why they have to reach through when they have plenty in there.
But you can see they do approve. Now, one thing, these don't have a bottom. And with the younger rabbits, we don't find it to be a big issue. With older rabbits, you do have to watch. Oh, the cat.
He thinks he's a predator.
And I don't think they're even paying attention to him. But we'll come back to discuss this a little bit more on some of the, I guess, pros and cons of this system here when we get the bigger tractor built.
So this particular cage here, we originally had it with a little divide down the middle so that when we had little babies that need to be separated, boys and girls, we could do that quite easily, or keep a small buck or doe from a litter if we were thinking about increasing our herd with them. So we're basically dismantling this now and going to take out the middle piece and make the ends longer so that it's a double wide. These shelves originally started with us 8 years ago when we first got into rabbits. They are basically, I think Chris mentioned, those shelving, wire shelving things that you can buy from Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that. They come in 8-foot sections. I believe currently they're around $30 Canadian a piece. And we've just cut them with bolt cutters to whatever we needed when we were doing this. So they're going to work great for this purpose. And I mean, 8 years in and we've never painted these. We've never done anything. And they're still in fantastic shape and about to be repurposed for hopefully another 8 years. The only other thing you really need for this are the tool to use these wonderful little, they actually are rabbit cage clips. We find they work just fine on the bars on the edge of these. And we had put the lids on, just attaching them with these steel zip ties. Now, unfortunately, we didn't think about that when we were getting supplies out. We don't have any more of these, but we do have a bunch of plastic ones. So we're just going to use plastic for now. But eventually, if this tractoring idea works, we're going to replace them with the metal ones again. Because again, this was 8 years old and we just took it off this tractor. Or cage, whatever you want to call it. So these shelves were all 4 feet from our old 4-foot long cages. And the boxes that we're repurposing for this are only 3 feet wide. So we are chopping this down to basically be 3 feet wide by the 8 feet long. So it'll end up being a pretty decent size. I think they'll be quite happy with it. And our hopes is that little piece there that Chris has kind of got as an offcut. We're hoping to figure out a way to make those into hay feeders inside our wooden hutches. Figure out a way to kind of bolt them to the edge and put them on a chain so that they kind of hang on an angle. I think it will work. Let us know what you think.
So we've already put one end on just to keep it standing upright so we can demonstrate. But all we're using is these are rabbit cage clip pliers, or specialty plier, which is super handy to have. And the little rabbit cage clip, which is just like a little J clip. So we just put it in. And then, of course, I'm going to go with the more difficult one first. And that's about as hard as it is to assemble these cages. The nice part about them, they go together pretty quick. They're pretty sturdy because they're self-supporting. And adult or anything but sort of newborn rabbits can't escape. They are in there, can't go through the bar spacing, which is good.
And if you move them often enough, they can't dig out either.
Well, that's a whole nother part of keeping rabbits is the digging. But so there we go. That's all we do for the sides. I'm going to do the last side, and then
so we've got that end on already. We're going to finish up this one, and then we got to figure out what we're doing for a lid. So we've hit our first snag. We didn't measure. We measured the box because we wanted to use the maximum space in the box. But in our plan to use 2 of the shelves as the lids, the 2 shelves only make up 32 inches, where our box was 36 inches. So, as you can see, we now have a 3.5 inch gap, probably 3-inch gap down the center of these. So, final results of the cage build.
Doesn't look pretty, but
it's repurposed. We didn't purchase anything for it other than some new cage clips. And we solved our problem by just making it a little smaller. So it now is only about 32 inches wide instead of the 36. But that allowed us to use the materials that we had.
And this is a good proof of concept and some concessions being cobbled together.
Yes. So demonstrate our lid opening there, Chris.
This is the part
that is questionable.
No, we made a choice to do this as 2 separate pieces because that allowed us to keep these the same length in case we ever repurpose it.
Yeah, so they both stayed their full 4 feet.
But in the future, we are planning to do 1 solid piece. The nice part is
one person technically
can lift it.
Can lift it and carry it around.
Although 2 is easier.
Yes, so I'm going to put the phone down and we're going to move this to its location.
So now it's time to move some bunnies over.
To their new home. You're going to like it. Don't scratch me. Right. Oh. And they disappear.
Straight to eating. We'll go get the rest of them. Well, this litter is all in and doing what rabbits do well. So, as we watch these bunnies, we'll talk about some of the, I guess, pros and cons of this. So, in the past, we've never had a tractor this big. We've always had it kind of individual rabbits beside each other. It's worked well, but what you will find is rabbits eat a lot. They will eat a lot of greens, which is not a bad thing in of itself, because that can provide basically a lot of food for them. However, the one big drawback to this kind of tractoring is because they have no bottoms, you're going to have to move it frequently. So for us, and what we've done in the past, and we'll see how this works with a larger tractor, but we've basically found that you have to move it twice a day, minimum. You may have to move it more than that, depending on the number of rabbits you have and what forage you have. As you can see, this is pretty big, or pretty high, so they actually have a lot to eat here, but I still imagine we're going to have to move this twice a day. The other sort of downside or disadvantage to these tractors is the height. So these are 16-inch sort of wide shelves, which for a litter of younger rabbits, that's excellent. They can exhibit a full range of motion, as you see that one right there. But when you get into the larger adult rabbits, it's not really big enough for long term. However, the offset to that is the fact that you're constantly moving it. So space is always a limiting factor with everything. And essentially, this is our compromise, or what we think is going to become our compromise for the months of the year when we can tractor, is give them access to as much food as possible, limit the space to the point that we can actually still catch them relatively easily, and probably maintain litters like this, sort of tractoring them on pasture for as long as we can, because the biggest plus is you're taking the rabbits to the food, which means you are reducing the food bill. So a couple other things to think about with this tractor method. One is you're still going to need shade, and they do have the end of the box that sort of allows them to get into the shade, so that's a good thing. We do find that we have to cover part of the hutch often with a piece of plywood or something to give them a little bit of extra shade. So that is kind of a bit of a negative in a way, I suppose, because when you have them out on pasture like that, you may not have them in deep shade. The other big thing that I'm kind of making this all sound negative, because really the biggest positives to tractoring your rabbits are you're giving them access to all the green feed they could possibly eat, which they will eat and they will use really well, but you're also reducing your feed costs. So you're giving them a non-pelleted diet, or at least partially a non-pelleted diet, and depending on the food you have available, and you're reducing your feed costs. So there's the two big benefits, and I think those in of themselves are huge. You're also giving them a bit more space than they might get in a cage system for a little bit less cost, I will admit. But because of the fact these cages are square, they do require relatively flat ground. So that can be limiting to the size. When we've used the smaller size cages that we showed you earlier, we have had them on a bit of a sloping topography, and they worked okay. But when if we were to go any bigger than that, we know it wouldn't work super well, because you obviously want this to sit fairly flat in the ground so that they don't try to dig and they don't try to slip under the bottom. Now, the young rabbits like this, up to probably butcher age, don't seem to, or at least in our experience, don't seem to be big diggers. But if you have adults in the group, you could use this tractor for, a doe and her litter, once the litter is kind of big enough to be active and move around well on their own. She might dig. We do find bucks in particular are notorious for digging, but some of the does we have, it's kind of a split. Some are big diggers and some don't dig at all. We actually have two does that we do have on quote-unquote pasture in a tractor right now, and one's a digger and one is not. So that being said, doesn't seem to be something you can select for. It's just something you have to be aware of with rabbits. So stay tuned. That's basically our rabbit tractor idea. It's a new version of an old theme that we've tried in the past, and we think by switching it to more the grow outs with additional space and maintaining that minimum of twice a day moving, I guess I can't stress that part enough, because your time is kind of substituting for the convenience of the pelleted diet. The pelleted diet is still going to take you less time, but you're going to be dependent on buying those pellets. This method, you can reduce your dependency. I'm not even going to say eliminate, but reduce significantly your dependency on pelleted diets. But you're going to spend more time because twice a day, minimum, you're going to have to come out and you're going to have to move these tractors. So on that note, I'll give you one last look at the bunnies and sort of what they've eaten here to give you an idea of just how much rabbits will eat given the opportunity. So there they are in their fresh pasture area in their tractor, and as you can see, they are just going to town on this green food and getting all sorts of different weeds. But if I go over here to where Stephanie's standing, you'll see her feet. This path, just as a reminder, when using tractors, really, in my mind, emphasizes, as I walk up the path here, emphasizes just how much 4 rabbits will eat. And keep in mind, these rabbits have been moved twice a day, every day, for 5 or 6 days. You can see here we actually moved them a bit earlier, but they will consume a lot. So if you are thinking of tractoring rabbits, space is going to be a huge consideration because they will eat it down. They will eat it down quick, and you're going to have to move them, and you're going to have a lot of food.